Do you poop? Because chances are, if you do, this video applies to you. As a gastroenterologist, sometimes I have to listen to patients describe to me what their poop looks like and decide whether or not further medical attention is required. Now, this video isn't meant to be gross. I'm not going to be throwing up pictures of different colored poops. Don't worry. But if you're not aware of what's coming out the other end, you might be missing out on certain signs of something more serious going on. Roy G. Biv. You guys know what I'm talking about? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So today I'm going to be going through the colors of the rainbow and some other colors that aren't in the rainbow to give some examples of how your poop might be telling you more about how your body is not working the right way. So like everything else on this channel, if you feel like there's something more serious going on, please go see a doctor in person so you can get more appropriate medical attention right away. If you want to see more videos like this on this channel, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below and turn on your notification bell right next to it. So of course, I think we all generally have an idea of what normal stool looks like. But we always have to interpret stool not just based on color, but also consistency and timing. So when we're thinking about color alone, I'm going to give some examples, but that's not the end-all be-all. There are a lot of things that go into the color of your stool, but primarily bile is the key component that stains your stool the color brown that we usually expect. And in fact, when we think about just consistency alone, there's an entire chart dedicated to that called the Bristol stool chart. I'm going to throw it up right here. And this sort of thing helps us interpret whether or not there's something out of the ordinary. So I'm going to start with red poop. So the R in Roy G. Biv is red. And to be fair, when we're thinking about red poops, a lot of the time it's more red than poop. Like you probably suspected, I'm talking about blood. When we think about fresh red blood in stool, we call that hematochezia, or bright red blood per rectum. Now, depending on how much blood is in the stool, we may or may not be able to see it. So if there's just a couple specks of red, you might easily miss out on that. But if you're seeing a huge volume of blood that's staining the entire toilet, sometimes that could be something more serious. And in general, the more red it is, the closer to the exit the source is. If we're thinking about a lot of blood in the toilet bowl, sometimes that's due to something we call a diverticular bleed. Now, that's not the only source for bright red blood. Of course, one of the most common reasons why people have bright red blood are hemorrhoids. Bleeding hemorrhoids are right at the anus. They're enlarged blood vessels that obviously, if something comes in contact with it and irritates it, they can easily bleed. But there are other conditions to be worried about, whether it's inflammatory bowel disease or colon cancer that sometimes can also result in bright red blood, although probably not quite as much as a diverticular bleed. In fact, bright red blood by naked eye, we do have the ability to test whether or not there are traces of blood that might still clue us into the fact that you could be bleeding from somewhere. Now, blood coming from higher up in your gut, like your esophagus or your stomach, has a different appearance, and I'll be getting into that a little bit later. Now, moving on to orange stools. This is a little less common, but there are reasons why some people might have orange stools, like if they eat foods high in beta-carotene, like carrots for instance, and also some medications that can also cause your stool to turn orange. So sometimes if you're taking multiple medications, you may want to review if any of those medications could potentially be causing the abnormal color in your stools. Now, when I think about yellow stools, it really depends on what shade of yellow we're talking about, and also a little bit about the consistency. So if we're looking at yellow, greasy stools that stick to the surface of the toilet bowl, that could mean that there is a lot of fat in the stool, and in specific situations could mean that your pancreas isn't making the enzymes to break down fat quite as much, and so you're passing a lot more fat through your stool. The other thing I think about when I think about yellow stools is a certain parasite infection called Giardia that is often taught to us as causing pale yellow diarrhea. So if you're having massive amounts of pale yellow diarrhea and have recently come in contact with possibly contaminated water, be sure to get it checked out by a doctor. Diverticula are these small pockets that form in your colon, and they're very thin-walled, so blood vessels can easily bleed through them, and usually they bleed a large amount all at once and then stop right away. So that's one source of bright red blood that just shows up all at once. So moving on to green stools. Now, so aside from eating certain leafy greens that could cause your stool to look more green, sometimes we think about patients who might notice more green in their stool because they might have an infection like C. diff, which sometimes we describe as causing watery, greenish, yellow diarrhea, or in some circumstances, some patients who've had their gallbladder taken out, and without that storage of bile and the bile just directly flowing into your small intestine, could potentially lead to more greenish looking stool. Now, blue stools are a lot less common, but what's interesting is that certain medications and substances might cause some bluish green stool. So if you saw my video about scarless weight loss, one of the procedures that we do these days is place a balloon in the stomach to help patients lose weight. Now, this balloon is filled with salt water, saline, but sometimes we add a dye to that salt water called methylene blue, because in case that balloon were to somehow leak, you'd be able to see that blue color in the urine or the stool, and that's basically a sign for the patient to come in and get that balloon taken out. I can't think of any other causes of blue stool off the top of my head, but if you do think of something or if you've experienced something, leave that in the comment section below. Now, the IV in Roy G. Biv refers to indigo and violet. Now, I don't think in the medical community we ever describe any stools as indigo or violet colored, but we do describe stools as being maroon colored, and similar to the fresh red blood that I described earlier, maroon colored stools can come from higher up in the gut, whether it's the small intestine, the stomach, or the esophagus, or even the mouth. People with bloody noses who are bleeding a massive amount, that might also tint their stool as well. So if you're seeing maroon colored stools, that might mean that there's bleeding from coming higher up. Of course, but even then, one of the big mimickers of this is actually something that we eat. And if you guessed beets, you guessed right. And this is something that is not all that uncommon. We actually see a lot of people who come in thinking that they're bleeding from somewhere, but it turns out that they drank a lot of beet juice or ate a ton of beets, and that's what happened. Now, as promised, not everything can be covered by the colors of the rainbow. So like maroon stools, we also sometimes see black tarry stools, and that's another indicator of bleeding coming up from higher in the gut because that blood has had time to be digested and so actually turns out looking black. But again, there's never just one cause for any color, so black stools can also be caused by iron, and a lot of people are suffering from iron deficiency anemia and have to take iron supplements. So don't be alarmed if you are taking iron and see black stools regularly, although your doctor should be following your blood count from time to time to monitor your anemia and make sure that there's not something more to that. And how about gray stools or white stools? Well, this is actually something that we come across in advanced endoscopy a lot because we deal with the bile ducts. And when there's blockage of the bile ducts or anything that prevents the flow of bile into your intestine, the bile isn't able to stain your stool, and so it turns out looking gray or white, and it's something we call acolic stools. So if that's something that we're starting to notice, then it might mean that there's something going on with your bile duct, and your doctor should be checking out if there's any sort of blockage that needs to be fixed. And last but not least, clear stools. Now, if you're having massive amounts of clear stool that it looks like water coming out the other end, chances are you already know that there's something serious going on and you've probably already sought medical attention. But now this might mean that something is stimulating your body to pump out tons of fluid into your stool, diluting it, making it look just like water as it comes out. And of course, there are some forms of diarrhea, like diarrhea predominant irritable bowel syndrome, that may also cause this sort of appearance. So like I said at the beginning of this video, if you have any question about what's going on in your stool, be sure to call up your doctor, make an appointment so that they can help you figure out what's going on. Alright, enough of poop talk today. Hopefully I haven't spoiled your appetite for the rest of the day, but if you haven't been paying attention to what's been coming out the other end, maybe you should start taking a look from time to time. Now that's it for today's video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking the red subscribe button below and turning on the notifications bell so you can see more videos whenever they come out. So until next time, please stay healthy. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.